everyone, welcome back to Misericorde. The last time we left off, Hedwig was flying through the town and she landed on the ground, and that's where we ended off. Anyway, without further ado, let's just get right into today's episode. Sister? I thought I saw you wandering up the hill. Are you alright? You'll catch cold if you stay out here too long. Come on, up you get. No. What's gotten into you? I'm so scared. Ever since I realized that the note at the bottom of the location, or where the location should be, started being able to change, I've been very wary of it, very hyper-focused on it, and I get super scared. But yes, it's a good thing I stepped outside when I did. I'd hate to think what would have happened if you gotten stuck up there all by your lonesome. You feel quite clammy. You know, to be honest, how did Hedwig get up there in the first place? I assume she was actually being dragged off by someone, and my instincts say it's this farmer that found her that was the one who dragged her up there when she was in her state of delirium, if you want to call it that. She didn't know how she ended up there. She thought she was flying, but she obviously couldn't be flying. So I would think when she was knocked out, the farmer dragged her up there. And well, who knows what he wanted to do with her, to her, but it probably wasn't gonna be very pretty. Where did your friends get to? Did you get lost? You were the new one, eh? Easy to do round here. I still have to second guess myself sometimes if I wander further than in. We can send you up to the abbey once you're warmed up. Are you hungry? I'll tell the wife we have a guest. Lucky enough, we've always kept enough around for 3. Because of James, I guess. This is scary. Here you are. Well, eat at your own pace. You should eat, though. Climbing that hill all by yourself, that's hard work. In those shoes, no less. Did something happen? She looks quite dazed. Miss Sister, because they forgot her name. Did someone get rough with you? Or did you have a fall, perhaps? I imagine it'd be easy. That path hasn't been taken care of in donkey's years. Is there anything we should tell your abbess? Eat up, dear. This is not on. If one of those towny bastards mistreated her, they won't hear the end of it. She's shaking her head. Thank God for that. Do try to eat something. Whatever has happened has clearly rattled you. Katherine. The dead woman? No. No, she means our Katherine. I mean, Katherine II is still your Katherine too, right? Birthmark on her face. Birthmark? Does she have a birthmark? I can't remember. I don't think she does. If you say so. I'm rubbish remembering that sort of thing. The tall woman from the estate. You remember... so she really did take the vows. Well, I'll be. Yes. She lives in the abbey now. I could not bring myself to look at them. And do you think she could kill someone? What sort of question is that? Well, yes. Harold! It's common knowledge. Even still. You're upsetting her. She's clearly a little touched right now. What is common knowledge? Well, Harold, do not upset her any further. She killed her husband, didn't she? Now look what you've gone and done. Who was the husband? The lord of the estate by the lake. It was a terrible scandal. And there was proof? Well, not that I know of. But it's proof enough, I suppose, that she opted to take the veal. We should stop talking about this. It's not proper. Why would she kill him? Had something to do with infidelity, if I remember right. It's not spoken of anymore. The whole village put it behind them when she left. And who was the lord of the estate now? Truth be told, I can't be arsed to keep up with the titles and whatnot. The new lord only visits occasionally, I think. A house with a murder like that hanging over it. I can't imagine it's very comfortable to stay there long. How did Katherine's husband die? She cut his head clean off with his own sword. That's exactly how Katherine II went out. But I don't think so. I mean, I don't think it's Katherine I that killed him, but clearly they went off in the exact same way. And if the abbess, if Mother Superior knows, then why did she not put two and two together? That means that she trusts Katherine I, that she didn't commit the murder initially. But I think most people would suspect Katherine I as having committed both murders, considering how they're all related to Katherine I, and also how they're carried out in the exact same way. The sword that Katherine II was killed with was not exactly her sword, but it was claimed to be her sword. So it's very, very similar. Or so they said. I wasn't there, so I couldn't tell you for sure. But one way or another, he ended up without his noggin. Nasty business. Nasty place in general, this hill. Something here must drive folks mad, I reckon. First Katherine, then or James. Rich or poor, something grab you. I'd move, but that's a task easier said than done. They spoke so freely of the horrid crime, it was common knowledge even. The answer, it seemed, had been available to me all this time. Several simple questions were all I had needed to ask. At the wife's urging, I tried to eat a little more of the pottage they had so kindly provided. It didn't take, however. I was elsewhere still. I felt shame. Shame for how long it had taken me to make any forward momentum on my task, for Katherine's sake. Shame for how simple the connections I had needed to make seemed now. I felt shamed that it taken a vision to put me on this path. What I had just experienced was a divine course correction. So she's saying that what she just experienced really was just vision, when I'm not sure. The kind of thing reserved, I imagined, for good sailors lost at sea or troops wandering in the desert. That I had been deemed worthy of this kind of direct messaging from God spoke very highly of Katherine. Surely, I felt, there were more important people to be helping than I. Perhaps I had been aided in their stead. Perhaps there was a prayer out there left unanswered because I was too foolish to do a very simple job. Perhaps, as impossible as it may seem to suggest, I was stupid enough to put a strain on God's omnipresence. Matthew 6:28. Considerate, agree, and more. Perhaps I am lower than the lily, which thrives while wanting for nothing. So dramatic, I know. But was I? Am I wrong to think about it? God provides for all, and God is not limited to any one action at one given time. Still, I feel sometimes that I could just be that wretched. Of course, as I might remind myself to be in a better mood, that's conceited talk. Or perhaps I am allegorizing the flowers and the birds too heavily, as Augustine warns us about. Who am I to complain after all? I have suffered far less than Job, yet here I am lamenting more than he ever did. Whether I am damned or just conceited, there is no path that leads me away from shame. Ah, that must be your friends. The man stood up to get the door. I did not turn around. I was deep in thought, staring into that fireplace. The flames were more comforting, more understanding, more understandable than any pair of eyes I had ever looked into. I could hear pleasantries being exchanged, footsteps on the wooden doors. Floors! I could feel two cold, wet presences approaching behind me. Soon I would have to leave the comfort of the fireside to join them. Hedwig, Sister Moira, Sister Eustace. She's very cold and distant right now. Can you forgive me? Wow. I can't tell, though, if it's a sincere asking for forgiveness or whether it's just something to put behind them. It's routes and we are returning. It was pointless to wait for a break in the rain, or though my companion said, the ride back up the hill to the abbey was much soggier than a trip down. Some other travelers in carts, flanked by armored horsemen, passed us by at the village outskirts. It's the war, it's the war. They looked just as miserable as I felt. I could hear raindrops plinking against their helmets as they hurried into town. We sat in silence for the first third or so. I looked out of the back of the cart towards a farmhouse chimney, yearning for the security of that fireplace until the building was out of sight entirely. I told the superior this was a bad idea, you know. You were wrong. Oh? Yes. I learned something very important today. Really now? Yes. It would be difficult to explain. We have time. Now, Eustace. I've already forgiven the poor woman. There's no need to torment her. I'm not tormenting her. I'm curious. Well, after we split up, I watched a parade go by. There was a parade? No, there wasn't. I had finally given up on trying to stare into the increasingly distant fireplace and turned to face Eustace. She looked tired. So, what do you mean, a parade? I mean exactly that. I'm sure you can understand. I had a vision. Really now. Yes, I swear it. I saw a parade, a procession of carts with no riders, all carrying a grand kites and banners, and one of them I thought at first carried an effigy. But it was... well, it got more mysterious after that, I suppose. What happened? Yes, tell us. This is very interesting. Well, I followed that particular cart for a while. I suppose that was how I ended up wandering away from the town square. Understandable. I did tell you to stay put, but I might make an exception for a vision. Eventually I lost him. But then I was carried through the air. I know, this sounds quite strange, and then... whatever courage the fire had given me had finally waned. I could not bring myself to explain the entirety of my experience to Eustace, whose expression remained, dare I say it, inscrutable. And then I came to, I suppose. I'm not quite sure how to describe it. You flew? She walked. The farmer saw her climbing the hill. Do you not believe me? I believe you felt like you were flying. I felt it. I saw it. I was in the air, however briefly. The man said he found you laying down on the grass at the top of the hill, getting soaked by the rain. I know it sounds hard to believe, but it's what happened. Eustace sighed deeply and pulled her hood tighter over her head. Why does she so freely believe Darcy's visions but not, Hedwig's? People don't fly. Perhaps flying is the wrong word. I was being carried? It's not like I had control of my faculties in the air. But you were plucked from the earth by God's own hand. Well, yes. Moira, the man saw her climbing the hill. So he says. Maybe he saw her after she had come back to the ground, or maybe both things are completely true. How would that work? Well, Hedwig could have been carried, and maybe the farmer was shown an image of her climbing. I mean, she would have been far away from the house, just sort of a shape, so he would go up and find her. The god carried Hedwig up the hill. It showed an image of her to a man who was already nearby. 2 divine revelations within, I don't know, 10 or 15 meters of each other. Darcy has visions all the time. Why is Hedwig having one so hard to believe? So now we have 3 people in close proximity all having grand visions? It does beggar belief, just a tad. I think it's beautiful. Maybe this mountain is just special. Eustace let the squelching of the mud beneath the cart wheels answer for her. I just think it's possible, that's all. I wonder if there's a thing, like how maybe the hill has actually, maybe there's like some toxic gas or some kind of plant that's releasing toxic gas into the air. Or maybe the sisters or the people living in this hill forage poisonous mushrooms or those kind of mushrooms that make you feel high and gives you delusions. I feel like maybe that has something to do with it, and that's why a lot of people are having visions as well. That could be possible. At any rate, it's a moot point to argue. I don't think Hedwig is lying, I just don't know if I can accept that it really happened. What about Darcy's visions? You've got quite an interest in those, haven't you? Darcy's are different. In what sense? Well, she's never claimed to be flying in any of hers. What does happen in hers typically? Oh, getting into the details. Why don't you ask her and spare me the inquisition? That was uncalled for. It's been a long afternoon. You can say that again. Can we all please make up before we get back to the Abbey? I like that. I'm sorry for being so hysterical. That's so strange. That usual Hedwig wouldn't be so forgiving. Do you guys know what I mean? She would be more angry instead of happily accepting that she's hysterical. No, I don't. Something happened to her. Really, something did. You're not hysterical. It was a cruel idea to force you into coming, I think. I'm sorry for insisting we stay longer. I wanted to tell Moira she didn't know the half of it. She didn't deserve to worry about having forced me to do anything when the superior demanded it in the first place. No, my behavior was inexcusable. As it is all too often. I thought I caught a glimpse of Eustace rolling her eyes out of the corner of my eye, but perhaps she was just adjusting her spectacles. I can appreciate that this trip was an extenuating circumstance. Yes, I think next time I will stay at the Abbey if it's all the same to you. We should at least take you on a picnic or some such. Small steps, you know. You can't stay cooped up in the Abbey forever. I thought that was rather the point. Hehe. Oh, you know, you have some dark sense of humor sometimes, Hedwig. There was no handshake this time, but I did not feel like I should push things any further. The rest of the ride up to the Abbey was silent, but at the very least, it was a slightly less comfortable silence than the one that preceded this conversation. I didn't like the uncertainty, but it would have to do. The rain was showing no signs of letting up when we finally arrived. I was particularly bedraggled. The indignity of the laundry water incident was something that would stick with me permanently. And as soon as I hopped out of the cart, I made a beeline for the dorms to change. Oh, Hedwig, where are you off to now? The dormitory. I must get out of these wet robes or I'll never be dry again in my life. Hehe. Why don't I draw a bath? I had to admit, this sounded like a wonderful idea. You know, I think I would like a bath very much. We all would after an outing like that, I think. What day is it again? Ah, November the 21st, I think. Perfect. I froze. I had not realized that Moira had meant We should all bathe together at once, and I did not like the idea at all. Oh, perhaps I'll have one tomorrow. Nonsense. You'll catch cold if you don't. Do we even have time to heat up water for it? With any luck, someone else already had the bright idea to take a bath today. I couldn't help myself. I groaned aloud and pulled my hood over my eyes. What's the matter? I suspect... Well, you don't have to join us, Hedwig, but I think it'd be a good idea. Oh, someone sneezed. Well, that decides it. Curse my wretched body. I would have escaped this humiliation if it weren't for that little sneeze, I'm sure of it. Oh, go on then. You two run up and get your change of frocks. Eustace, would you mind getting mine? On it. We made our way upstairs to the dorms quickly, dripping water all over along the way. Oh, Darcy. It kinda scared me a bit. At the top of the stairs, I nearly ran straight into Darcy. Oh, good, you're back. I was just looking for you, Eustace. Hello, Dars. You have a minute? I need your help with something. Of course. Hedwig, would you mind getting Moira's clothes? Hers is the door between Katherine and Darcy's. Oh, yes, I can do that. Eustace nodded, and Darcy hobbled away back down the staircase. Eustace stopped for a moment on a landing, however, and turned to me. That reminds me. You should talk to Darcy later, you know. About your vision. Oh, yes, I will try to remember do so. Eustace nodded, then disappeared down the stairs after Darcy. I quickly scooped up my dry frock from my dormitory. No suspiciously placed books on my dorm bed, I noted. It felt wrong to intrude in Moira's room, but at this point, I desired nothing more than to get this whole exercise over with as quickly as possible. I opened her door and slipped inside, on the lookout for her spare clothes immediately. Why do I feel like we will find something in Moira's room? The last thing I wanted to do was gawk at somebody else's room uninvited. I could not help but notice how neat and tidy it was, however. There was a beautifully carved crucifix hanging on the wall above her pillow, and her reading desk was meticulously stocked with papers. A handsome quill sat next to an ink pot as well. To cap it all off, there was a beautiful little box resting on a desk next to the organized papers. The wood was clearly expertly carpentered, and it was gilded in a regal yet understated fashion. The whole room had a sense of carefully considered elegance to it. It was perfectly fitting for Moira. Simple but radiant, not vain but reverent. Please do not tell Moira I just described her as simple. I did not mean it as an insult. So you think Moira's still around then? Approachable, uncomplicated, steadfast in her positivity. The bath situation is a perfect example of what I meant. I had been so cruel to her in the village, and to be perfectly honest, Eustace wasn't exactly kind to her in the cart either. But Moira's instinct was to bring us closer together. There's a simple beauty to that. I think so, at least. Anyway, I quickly identified an impeccably folded set of clothes next to her bed underneath the window. I scooped them up quickly. As I turn around, however, I don't like it. No. The pile of clothes I was carrying, I think, had brushed up against the quill resting atop her desk. I watched it tumble end over end to the floor, carrying the ink pot with it. Oh shit, no! Black liquid oozed out of the pile of broken glass. I scurried away and closed the door behind me in a panic. I checked the bottom of my shoes. There was nothing there, thank God. In reality, it was dead silent. But I promise you I could hear the bubbling, oozing, and dripping of the undoubtedly expensive ink I had just splashed all over the floor behind the door. If it's not one thing, it's always another with me. Was I being punished for dawdling once again? Should I have empathetically refused the offer of a bath and instead made a beeline to the superior's office? Should I have gone then at that very moment? Truthfully, I only came to that conclusion a bit later. In the actual moment, all I could think about was what to say to Moira, or if I would say anything at all. It's shameful to admit, but I was frankly terrified of putting any strain on our relationship at all after my embarrassing display in town. Moira was endlessly forgiving, but I worried that even I would find an end to her graciousness if I kept imposing upon her. And so I decided I would leave this. I couldn't leave quickly enough. What? She's just gonna let it lay on the ground and not own up to it? I practically flew down the stairs. Suddenly, I was very eager to get into a bath. That's not very nice, Hedwig. Anything was better than being caught red-handed with a broken bottle of ink, even burying myself in front of Moira and Eustace. Oh, that kind of scared me. I got scared. Moira was already in a tub by the time I arrived. I didn't know they kept the cap on? You call it a cap? I think there's another name for it. She beamed as I entered her room. I kept my eyes low and deposited her change of clothes to the edge of the wooden tub. Ah, was Eustace waylaid? Yes, Darcy needed her for something. Well, thank you kindly. I realized that there were 2 tubs similar to the one I had used to bathe my first time out of my cell. At the very least, I was relieved I was about to submerge myself in water rather than stand awkwardly in one of the many smaller wash basins stacked against the wall. I had been using those to wash myself whenever I could squeeze in a trip to the baths alone after I had discovered, to some horror, that communal bathing was considered the norm here. I thought 2 big tubs might be nice. The water's not hot, but it's pleasant. You fill these up fast. A miracle of engineering. The abbey is quaint, I will say, but I'm very thankful for the thorough plumbing. The builders didn't skimp on that at the very least. She raised an arm to point at the wall behind her, and I instinctively shut my eyes. Oh, don't be silly. Anyway, the faucets are back there, quite quick. I had my own faucet in my cell actually, but I didn't know it was connected to anything greater. Ooh, you should take a walk around the cistern one of these days. It's quite fascinating. It's the oldest building here if you can believe it. 200 years old at least, and it serves the kitchen, the baths, the lavatory, and keeps it all separate. I'm glad to hear it's all separate. Hee. I'd never feel comfortable here otherwise. But it's apparently not far off from the kind of water management you'd find in the richest castles. You think this abbey was built as a castle once? Truly, we are blessed. It might not always feel that way, but yes, I think we are. How does it work? I must admit I couldn't tell you. Sister Katherine showed me a diagram she found in a library once, but it was a bit complicated for me. I know much more about how bodies work than buildings, I'm afraid. Oh, right, she is a resident doctor. Speaking of, she leveled a finger at me with a mischievous glint. Are you going to get in a bath? You're looming a bit. Oh, well, go on. I'll shut my eyes, I promise. She squeezed her eyes shut in a fashion that she might have intended to be jovial, but I couldn't help but feel condescended too. Nevertheless, I sighed and began to gingerly shed my layers. I balled up my damp clothes next to the empty tub and stepped in as quickly as I could. If I could avoid being seen at all, that would have been grand. I take it you're in? I am. The water was not as warm as the bath Darcy had drawn for me after I had first left my cell, but it was still a relief to sink into it. Moira opened her eyes again, blinking comically. This is nice. Indeed. I sank as low as I could and pulled my knees up to my chest. With my chin resting in the water, I could still peer at Moira over the lip of the tub. I did not want to be seen, but I also did not want to be rude. So at the very least, I maintained eye contact. Black and blue. Excuse me? Oh, I'm sorry, I was just thinking aloud. Your humors, they're black and blue, aren't they? Well, mostly black, with a little phlegm for a color. Does that sound about right? No points for guessing that, I reckon. Eustace had appeared in the doorway. She was already removing her hood as the door closed. I looked away out of modesty as soon as I realized or saw that she was casually shedding all of her clothes and haphazardly tossing them aside as she walked. Hehehe. Well, it's my job to know these things. Do me next. That's easy. You are as phlegmy as they come, with just as much yellow bile sloshing around in there for good measure. You're like a big, clever soup. Goodness gracious, when are we eloping? Moira laughed and I could hear her flick some water in Eustace's direction. Then I realized something that gave me an instant, sinking feeling. Well then, who am I sharing with? Ooh, good question. I didn't really think about that. Well, hurry up and decide. It's getting nippy. Can we not get a third tub? We only have 2 big ones. We could play a game to decide. Too late, I've made my mind up. I braced myself, but the splashing sounds that followed came from the other tub. I opened my eyes to see Eustace, looking as nonplussed as ever, sitting next to Moira, who seemed wholly unperturbed. Thank God, I thought. I've never seen you without your cap, Hedwig. I guessed you had black hair, but I suppose I'm still surprised to see it. Really? I felt like I knew the moment I saw her. Are my humors that pronounced? Yes, but whose aren't? You put much more stock into that sort of thing than I do, I suppose. Well, it is my duty to know. True enough. What color do you think my hair is, Hedwig? The thing is, I feel like Eustace's hair was kind of obvious that it would be that kind of color. I guess kind of like a fair color. Kind of expected it, to be honest. You're always wearing that thing in the bath, but I think I know. What color is Moira's hair? I'm asking Hedwig! Moira was still wearing her cap. She gestured at her head, dripping water onto Eustace's bushy brown hair in the process. I wouldn't really know how to deduce that. Pick a wild guess. Hehehe. I frowned, squinting at Moira's eyebrows from across the room. Some sort of, I don't know, dark brown? Chestnut brown? Does the accent not give it away? Ow! Moira elbowed Eustace, chuckling. No cheating. It feels like there's a clue you want me to recognize that I'm not seeing. Hearing. Top of the morning to ya, Hedwig. I don't get it. Oh my god. Don't say that! With an impish grin, Moira tucked her cap up a little. A few locks of jet black hair draped across her face. Oh, really? Black? Oh, huh. Just like you, Hedwig. How nice. Consider me surprised. Did you expect a fiery Irish redhead? I kind of did. Hehehe. You win. I genuinely had no idea what she was talking about. In fact, I was slightly irritated. I hadn't expected anything. How could I have? Even the considerate and kind Moira couldn't remember that until recently, my entire world had been a few meters across. Sorry for the misdirect. I couldn't help myself. Red-headed? Like King David? King David had red hair? I thought he had brown hair. What does it say in the Bible? He's described as Rufus, which means red-headed. Oh, I always took that to mean he was, well, you know, red-faced. As in his whole head is red. Really? Well, I could see that interpretation, but... Besides, in the Song of Solomon, I remember thusly, Electus meus candidus et revincadus. My lover is red-headed, His hair curly and black. Oh. And more Latin. Golden-faced is usually similarly to red-headed here, I should think. You might be right. This is so exciting. I'm caught between two true scholars. It's like I'm at a real council. It's our job. That's right. Still, I like Hedwig's interpretation. It's fun to think about David having red hair. It's dramatic. I didn't care for Moira's use of the word interpretation here either. Either Eustace was correct or I was, and I didn't much like the idea of being wrong, but I was grateful for the support. The conversation subsided for a while, and I became all too aware of the fact that this was a peculiar state for three women who had been at each other's throats earlier in the day to find themselves. I worried that Eustace and Moira felt the same way, and prodded them with questions. So, do you all do this often? I should hope so. Bathing is very important for your health. I think she means, together. Oh, yes, well, it's a little embarrassing at first, I suppose, but it's efficient, isn't it? I don't really plan around it, but there's enough of us here that you're really gonna run into someone else eventually. It's how things are done the world over. The Romans had huge communal bathhouses. Monks wash together too. I must admit though, a private bath every now and then is to die for. I suppose I've been lucky. Whenever I've come to use a wash basin so far, I've been all by myself. Is it difficult? Being around other people, I mean. I really should have made sure that this wouldn't be too big of a leap for you, especially after the day you've had. I'm quite alright. But I'd rather no one looked at me. Ever? That's right. Not while I'm the new, certainly. It's nothing we haven't seen before. They spoke in unison. Eustace down low, Moira way up high. Still, all the same. But I understand. If I take my spectacles off, you'll be just a pale smudge. Would that help? That's actually kind of her. I prefer that over being defined. Right, you are. I'll pop them off when it's time to dry off. By the way, Eustace, aren't you ever worried you'll drop your eyeglasses in the water? Those are really expensive, surely. Unbelievably. I'm lucky to have them. They're huge. I dread to think how much they cost. Is glass expensive? Very. Oh goodness, yes. I'm sure you've noticed that there aren't too many glass windows here. Let me think. There's the Superior's office window, the chapel. I've had these for a very long time and I hope they last. My eyesight's always been dreadful, but it could always get worse. Goodness, I'll pray for your sake. I wouldn't wish couching on my worst enemy. Couching? Yeah, Hedwig. Couching. You cut the eye open and then... Ooh. I won't go into details. Thank you. So, Eustace, tell us. How did you afford those? That's a little forward, don't you think? True, but well, we're already in the bath, aren't we? Fair enough. I did some work for a glassmaker a long time ago and took these instead of monetary payment. Ooh, what sort of work? What must I do here, really? Information organization, maintaining a library, managing orders and logging events, that sort of thing. I was about to say that sounds like a lot of work even for a pair of glasses, but I suppose none of us are being paid at all here. I get by fine. I don't miss the old job. What made you come here? Well, I had always wanted to retire to the countryside. And once I had a sturdy pair of eyeglasses, I reasoned, what else could I possibly want for? Oh, I don't know. A rich husband and beautiful home, hee. I never wanted those things. Nor I. I did, once upon a time. Now, though, I agree with you two, I think. At the very least, it took more than that to get me away from here. You know, over the past few weeks, I've been so overwhelmed by everything new to me here. I'm not sure I will ever truly get used to it. This life of asceticism might feel simple to you, but it'll never be simple to me. I was prepared to spend my whole life with much less than all this. That is a very helpful perspective, actually. Yes. That's important to keep in mind, I think. Are you feeling better after everything? Everything that happened today, Hedwig? I don't know. Most of all, I just feel embarrassed. As I feel about my behavior in the Misericorde, yet still. Forget about it. Yes, there's no need to really worry. I think I would fare far worse if I were in your shoes. And we can help you get better. In fact, I think it's our responsibility. Perhaps it was because we were all relaxed from our baths, or perhaps there was something to be said for being naked and vulnerable in a room with other people after all, but this second round of apologies for the day felt genuine. I wondered how the ink on Moira's floor was faring. It was hard to relax with that in the back of my mind. The conversation slowed down as we all focused on washing and scrubbing, and I soon realized that the most difficult challenge was yet to come. When we're all done and it's time to, get dressed, could I go first? Of course, but why? Well, it's just like we've been talking about. I'm not used to all this and it's a bit embarrassing. Yes, that's exactly. Wouldn't it be more embarrassing having us just sitting here watching you? Don't confuse her. I'm trying to help. No, she's right. I mean, the most embarrassing would be all of us at once. Why? Because then you'll both see me, and I'll see both of you, and we'll be close to each other. What if Eustace and I both close our eyes? That would work. Would it? Or what if you two went first and I closed my eyes? That seems more, I don't know, efficient? I wasn't aware that efficiency was a concern. Honestly, this is the most I've ever had to think about being naked. Hedwig, I appreciate the offer, but I'm happy with letting you go first. And closing our eyes? Yes, don't be difficult. We just said we'd do our best to make her comfortable. I have no problem with that broadly, but doesn't it feel a bit weird to worry this much about seeing each other in the buff? Naked I came from my mother's womb and all that. Who cares? That's not for us to judge. It is a little bit. What about Matthew 5:28 or Leviticus 18:9? Again, with the Leviticus, we're not actually sisters. I don't think that passage applies. Sister is a term of formal address. It has nothing to do with being actual siblings of any sort. I know you know that. She was right, of course, but that just irritated me more. I had really been counting on my superior scriptural knowledge to excuse me from being personally embarrassed, but alas. Thinking about it, Hedwig, I know this might be difficult, but how about we all just try doing it in the normal way? Getting out and getting dressed all at once? I think Eustace is right to some degree. Judas! In what sense? That it'll be more difficult in the long run if you don't get used to it. I don't think that's anything you need to worry about. I'll just keep bathing alone when there's no one else here. Can we make a decision before I get too pruny? I think we should all get out on the count of 3. You said that you weren't gonna push me as far anymore. Hedwig, there are 3 of us here and we all like each other. You had a tough day in the village, but you made it back in one piece. Surely this will be easy compared to what you went through around all those strangers? Still, that is a bit pushy. I don't want to push you, but I also want to help you. And part of that, I think, might involve pushing you just a little bit. She's right. If I have no choice. I had nothing left to argue with. My day had been thoroughly confusing, and if mingling naked with my shameless sisters was to be the capstone to the whole affair, so be it. I don't think it was Moira's argument that convinced me, however. Or rather, it might have, but only because it made me consider the full weight of what I had seen in my vision. I didn't know what it meant, but I certainly felt compelled by a newfound drive to stop stalling in every little aspect of my life. You do have a choice, but let us get it over with. So what if I get a glimpse of your, socket? Belchos? Good lord, that's old-fashioned. Hehehe. I'm a fancy little lady at heart, and you can see that with her through her room. I took a deep breath and braced my arms against the edge of the tub. Eustace, however, was already standing up and drying herself off with a towel, and you know, I've been meticulously detailed about almost every aspect of my days outside of my cell, but do you mind if I glossed over the rest of this? I don't particularly feel like describing Eustace and Moira's bodies any further, or my own, for that matter. I have excised several minor details from my story as it is, after all. I have been exhaustive, I will grant that, but I haven't told you every last meal I've eaten. It's not like I've told you about every trip I've taken to the privies. I think our conversation in the bath was relevant information, but I think it will suffice to say that I did not enjoy getting dressed in front of my colleagues. But I was very brave about it. You can rest assured of that. Pruning is just as much my responsibility as a chronicler as cataloging, wouldn't you agree? What is important about this ordeal is that I was actually quite courageous and did not make any sort of scene at all. I got dressed alongside everyone else, and we departed the baths without incident. Incident, however, was not too far away. As we passed the rectory on the way to the cloister, Moira gently grabbed my wrist. "Ah, Hedwig, why don't we go in here?" "Whatever for?" Well, I have something I want to show you." "What does she want to show me?" "In directory?" We should go in. I was completely bewildered. The pair positioned themselves on either side of me and pushed me towards the steps up to the large wooden door. Oh no, I thought. This is it. They knew I'm nosing around about Katherine's death. They were in cahoots, and they were gonna have me killed. No, I think I'd like to stay outside if it's all the same to you. Stop wriggling. Let's just go inside. It won't take a moment. No, thank you. What are you two doing? I'll scream. Oh god, I wonder what, though. I was pushed through the large wooden doors. I stumbled backward into the room, bumping my backside in the chair that I held onto to stay upright. Gingerly, I turned around and... "Took you long enough!" A crowd was gathered around the rectory table, which was itself so laden with food, I could scarcely believe it hadn't buckled. Everyone present was smiling widely, and I felt reassured at the very least that I was not about to be murdered in a dark room. Is it a birthday? Or maybe not, I don't know. Welcome back, Hedwig. How was the village? It was a valuable experience. I'm glad to hear it. Oh, what is all of this? A few days ago, some of the sisters approached me with a reminder that St. Cecilia's feast day was approaching. Oh. Which, if I am not mistaken, would be the feast day closest to your date of birth, yes? I think so, but it is a birthday celebration. I had never had much need to track my birthdays while I was anchoress. Christmas was my mental marker for the passage of time. Although, once I thought about it, I did remember receiving a more handsomely prepared meal once every autumn for a few years when I was still a child in my cell. Your friends suggested we celebrate. Our friends? I must admit, St. Cecilia's Day is one that we have oft neglected to mark with a proper feast day. But we all agreed it would be appropriate to throw a little bash for you. And for her saintliness, of course. I don't know what to say. Start with thanks, and we can go from there. Everyone chuckled. I smiled graciously, even though Darcy's remark felt far more cutting than she likely intended. How rude of me. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Everyone murmured appreciatively in response and moved towards their seats. Mora patted me on the back as she walked to her seat with a twinkle in her eye. Everyone began plating food from the generous piles of poultry, fish, and vegetables in front of them. I thought I recognized some of the carrots I had helped Darcy harvest not long ago, a plump roast duck set in the center of the table. It all looked and smelled delicious. I apologized for the little ruse. Moira suggested the surprise. Guilty. Everyone here contributed a little, however. Isn't that right? I do believe it was my general idea at first, if we're collecting accolades. Yes, but I remember the feast day. Darcy somehow found the time to direct the preparation of this meal and bake those wonderful fritters of hers to take to the village. Speaking of, did any of those make it back? Oh, no, we gave everything away. A shame, but not a surprise. I'm sure the town couldn't get enough of them. We all helped in the kitchen too. I was distracted for a moment. Yes, Margaret, Adela, and Flora all graciously helped prepare the meal while we were in the baths. Which, let us not forget, I had drawn beforehand. Adela. That wasn't a spontaneous suggestion on Moira's part. Hee. This is all so elaborate. Nobody has ever done anything like this for me before. And don't you forget it. Another chuckle went around the whole table. I smiled weakly. Tears were welling up behind my eyes. Aw, Hedwig! Marta and I had the very important duty of taste testing. That's right. And guess who's at the table? Well, thank you all very much. I could feel everyone staring at me expectantly. This is really wonderful. I choked my words out, overcome with too many emotions at once. Mercifully, being on the verge of sobbing past a simple gratitude to everyone else present. I was thankful, but I was also confused, anxious, hurt, terrified. As I mentioned, too many things at once. I did not deserve any of this. I was not anyone's friend. I was a liar and a sneak. A dog set loose in a coop to root out a fox. I gawked across the table at the superior, who smiled back at me. I found it incredible that nobody got caught in the puppet strings connecting her and I as they reached between us for food. And as it is St. Cecilia's feast day, I will be performing a little composition of mine in a chapel after our meal concludes. If anyone would like to join me for a rehearsal beforehand, I would appreciate the assistance. Margaret? Katherine? I'd rather. There's nowhere we'd rather be, but I do think we have some urgent matters to attend to when this is over. Urgent? Well, we were helping prepare all this for most of the day. I have some important task I set aside. It was my pleasure, just so you know, Hedwig. Of course, those two trying to weasel out of helping the superior because they hate her little songs. Well, if it is urgent, of course you may be excused. Since when is anything around here urgent? Ow! Laura glared at Katherine, who maintained an utterly innocent expression. To everyone else, barring emergencies, you are invited and encouraged to assist. Either way, we must all convene in the chapel later. This was met with a ripple of non-committal murmuring. I could tell the food was exciting, as was to be expected. But as I ate, I felt like I was sitting next to myself. I could not taste the juicy duck or the rich gravy. I was having it described to me secondhand. Everything I could taste, smell, hear, and see felt like it wasn't really there. Are you feeling well, Sister Hedwig? Oh, my apologies. I've had a long day. What was it like going down to the village? That must have been quite an adventure for you. It was... I'm afraid I did not adjust to the experience as well as I could have. It was all a bit stressful, but I think she'll do better next time. Perhaps a picnic or some such. Yes, we more or less came up with the same idea, didn't we, Hedwig? That's right. Wonderful news. I do apologize for the stressful assignment, Hedwig. It was the best I could come up with on such short notice. She took a sip of wine but kept her eyes on me. Well, I suppose it was all worth it for this. Hear, hear. Although I'm not sure. I was not sure I was worth all this trouble. Aw, Hedwig. I'm not sure how I can repay you all for this. You've all been very kind and well, you do not have to repay us for any of this. Absolutely not. That isn't the point. If you really must feel like you are doing something for us in turn, you could keep your self-flagellation to a minimum. You could indulge us in some questions about yourself. You've been out of that little cell for weeks now, and I still don't feel like I know you as well as I should. That's a fantastic idea. If she's up to it, no escape. I'll do my best. In that case, where are you from? Germany is where I was born, but I don't remember anything about it. I suppose you could say I'm from here? You do not remember anything about where you were born? There is very little I can recall about my life before I took my oaths, I'm afraid. Is there anything at all you can remember? Any particular places? Your parents? No, I don't have any recollections of my mother or father. I'm sorry. Crumbs, there's no need to apologize. I just can't imagine what that's like. Don't listen to her, Hedwig. That sounds positively blissful. Hedwig von Limbero. I do remember one thing. I think. It's hard to know, in fact, if it's a memory at all. But it is, at the very least, something I know I could never have picked up in my cell. Everyone leaned forward slightly. I remember the smell of the ocean. That's all? For the most part. There are little bits and pieces I associate with that smell if I try my hardest to recall, but nothing substantial. I was just about to say, the smell of the ocean is one of my strongest memories as well. You and I have more in common than I expected, Sister Hedwig. You speak in any other languages? I don't think so. My grasp of our own language leaves much to be desired. I'm not sure a second one would find purchase in my head. Perhaps you could forget a few phrases like find purchase to make room. Katherine. I remember the saltiness of the sea, and if I try hard enough, I think I could describe the sound of waves. But beyond that, my earliest memories are, well, the Office of the Dead. The Office of the Dead. Ah, how beautiful. Bit morbid for a first memory. I don't find it morbid. It's a very comforting memory, actually. The bishop read it for you, I presume. I would have liked to witness that. It was before my time. 20 years ago, I had just taken my vows at Bornig Grove. Yes. All in all, I remember it being quite a moving ceremony. That's lovely. I'm glad it's a positive memory for you. After that, it mostly became a blur. I gotta search out what is Office of the Dead. Not in a bad way. It's more like the rest of my life up until recently was one long meditation. Things tend to move faster and slower, all at once in a small place, don't they? No? Time is the same always, I think. That makes a fair bit of sense to me, actually. It certainly describes how I felt after moving here. Which reminds me, how were my old stomping grounds, Hedwig? Did anyone mention me? She shot me an oddly piercing look. No. I'm afraid not. A shame. I'm sure the place is falling apart without me. The grapes they've been sending up to us haven't been tasting as good ever since you left. You know what? I think you're right. Eat. We mustn't let all this food go to waste, and we're due in a chapel for that little recital. Everyone groaned, and the table-wide conversation dissipated as the sisters ate their fill. My stomach was still rather uneasy. I tried to eat as much of the admittedly delicious meal as I could, but I could not keep up with any of the others. I watched the others eat as I picked at my own plate. I couldn't help but notice that Angela was not present. Oh, I didn't realize that. I was not surprised that an event, even partially in my honor, did not interest her. I was inclined to agree with Angela's assessment. I was not worth this level of pageantry. As I forced the last bits of food down my throat, all I could think of was the disappointment Moira would feel as soon as she entered the dorms. Her unwarranted kindness towards me would dissipate instantly as soon as she realized what had happened. I looked across the table at her innocent, smiling face. Just apologize, Hedwig. She would hate me the instant she truly knew me. The piles of food slowly wore down to nothing. Conversation began to start back up again, albeit quieter, calmer. Everyone, it seemed, was at peace after this decadent meal in my name. I'll never get tired of your cooking, Darcy. Thanks, I will never get tired of doing it. Thank goodness for that. Really good work, Darce. Everyone chimed in with murmured agreement, even Flora, who looked uncharacteristically content. It was a lovely meal, Darcy. Thank you, everyone. If you would all excuse me, I must go and prepare the recital while this gets cleaned up. Would you assist me, Hedwig? Yes, Superior. On her own feast day? What did she do to deserve this? More than Katherine could know. I don't mind. In truth, I couldn't wait to be freed of the crowded rectory, if only for a few minutes. I gave the sisters a polite bow of my head and followed the Superior out of the room. The rain had ceased just as our meal had concluded. We walked briskly along the path between the rectory and the chapel. The evening air was cool and pleasant after the rain, although the dark clouds were still threatening above us. The Superior seemed oddly tense as we approached the large doors. Somehow I knew nobody would volunteer to help me in the chapel. But it made for a good show, don't you think? Nobody will suspect a thing. My apologies, Superior, but I have no idea what you mean. She did not reply. Oh, this was so suspicious. The Superior held open the heavy chapel door for me and ushered me inside. I obliged and then let out an embarrassing yelp as I saw two people waiting for me inside. One was large and stately. I did not recognize him. The other... Was it... Oh, Angela? It is about time. My apologies, Sister Angela. Angela had been sitting in a pew near the altar, but she had risen to meet us as soon as the door opened. There was no mistaking her lanky form, even in the dim evening light. The person next to her, however... Sister Hedwig? You have met this man before, although you may not recognize him. Oh, I got scared. I wish we could be meeting under more pleasant circumstances, my child, but it is nonetheless a pleasure to see you in the flesh once more. Bishop Richard. It is an honor to meet you again? Mr. This is His Excellency Richard Bell, the Bishop of Carlisle? My goodness, My apologies, Your Grace. The portly man gently waved away my apology. Worry not. I have met no one else in a situation as unique as yours. I realize this must all be very strange to you. He knows? Yes. I briefed both him and Angela on the extent of our investigation this afternoon. So Angela knows too. I could not believe it. I gawped at Angela, who made a point of looking straight past me. My travels brought me here a little earlier than I expected. Such a tragic situation, I felt I should be more present than my usual monthly visit for the sacrament allows. I will be here for just over a week to offer counsel to the grieving, and our investigation shall continue apace. The man sighed heavily. I appreciate your diligence, but it sounds to me as if you're staring at the answer in the face and refusing to believe it. I do not think it's that simple. I believe, as does Hedwig, after her own extensive research, that James Foreman is innocent. Which would mean one of your charges is a murderer. How could you even entertain such a ghastly idea? Call it one of my hunches. Have I been wrong before? Mabel. Mabel, that's her name? Come now. Have I? What have your other hunches been? I told you that I had a bad feeling about building a clock tower onto the side of the chapel. Was a foolish idea. And lo and behold, it fell down not a month into construction. A lucky guess. I have a storied career of lucky guesses then, Your Excellency. Oh man, the tension. Before I was appointed abbess, this place was on death's doorstep. I have cultivated and pruned it into a garden. A simple one, perhaps, but a garden nonetheless. I do not mean to insult you, Mabel. In fact, it is my respect for your work that gives me such pause. How could I believe that one of the sisters you preside over, many of whom came to this church under your selection, would be capable of such a thing? Now that is interesting. So this is interesting because it means that everyone here was basically personally vetted by the superior. There's a reason for all of this. The superior did not have an answer for this. I recall that I could hear her teeth grinding in the ensuing silence. I do applaud your ingenuity in recognizing that Hedwig here would be an impartial observer, but it seems to me that this whole situation has gotten out of hand. Please forgive this hypothetical, dear sister, but why is Angela part of this trusted circle now? I would like to note that I, too, believe James Foreman is guilty. I am just entertaining your superior's logic for a moment, if you allow me. Of course. Well, Mabel, Hedwig I understand, but what places Angela above suspicion? Sister Angela is my prior. It would be impossible, as well as unethical, for me to continue to keep this investigation from her. She found James and accused him to begin with. I should like to put her belief through its paces. She is to be your successor, indeed. And while I disagree with her position on Mr. Foreman's alleged crime, I love and respect her. I would like this to be a learning experience for her. My dearest Mabel, I know you love and respect all of your nuns. Why then must you believe that one of them is a killer? And why couldn't it be Angela? The superior and Angela looked at each other. Angela grimaced. Well, grimaced more prominently than usual. I can account for all of my movements the night Katherine was murdered. I'm sure everyone here can. And they can be vouched for. Oh? Angela was in my office at the likeliest time of Katherine's slaying. In your office? Complaining. I was vigorously arguing against the misapplication of yet more of the Abbey's funds, and requesting action be taken against some of our sisters' poor behavior. There might have been more items on my list. It is my responsibility as prior to check the superior when I sense things are wrong. Nobody could possibly overlook your diligence. You mean to tell me that her alibi is that she was arguing with you long enough to be sure she was not involved? Forgive me, but that sounds rather unbelievable. The superior and I exchanged a glance. Angela looked away and exhaled sharply. It's true. It's true. But still, Even if she was not there physically to carry out the murder, who's to say that she did not plot it and that someone else carried it out for her? All eyes turned to me. As ludicrous as the story sounded, I thought back to my conversations with the superior in her office. Those walls and that door were thick. As angry as it made me to imagine Katherine's death being overlooked by the Abbey's authority simply because they were bickering, it was all too plausible. That is believable, actually. My goodness. I will do my best to stay on your good side, Sister Angela. I will keep that in mind, Your Excellency. Why didn't you tell me this before? Either of you. I had hoped to inform you last night as it happens. I thought back to the events of the previous evening. Angela had indeed said something to me before leaving the Misericorde, or rather, before she was practically chased out of by Katherine. My understanding of these events suddenly felt a little clearer. It certainly explained why Katherine bristled so much at Angela's presence. Did Katherine perhaps detect an ulterior motive in Angela, the same motive that so far nobody had detected in me? Oh. I made the decision very recently. The day before yesterday, in fact. It had been conspicuous enough to have you emerge from your cell and start poking around into these horrific events. Two of you at once would have been a touch obvious, I should think. I would have refused to do it. And now it would seem that I have no choice, Your Excellency. We are in a strange situation, to be sure. But I think between us, we can make sure that justice is done. I will stay out of your way. Seems like he just doesn't want to get involved at all. I do not wish to involve myself in any investigation. It feels rather wrong for me to be anything but an impartial visitor. Of course. However, if anything suspicious is told to you throughout the course of your counseling, suspicious? Where would the line be? I believe I am giving you ample leeway to deal with this situation the way you see fit. I can think of precious few members of the diocese that would accept your actions in this situation, let alone grant you the freedom to make half the decisions you have made in the first place. I understand. Removing an anchoress from her cell is such a unique course of action, I would not even know where to begin explaining it to the Archbishop. I am not sure there is even a precedent on the books for how you might be punished if the situation came to light. I hope, for all of our sakes, that your radical decisions here at least yield some results. If they did, I might have an easier time preventing you from being excommunicated. Or worse. I felt a lump building in my throat. I have been so preoccupied with my own fragile situation at the Abbey that I haven't even considered the wider world of church politicking. We will solve this mystery, and I will be vindicated. I truly hope so. England is at war with itself, and the last thing the church needs is to appear weak and ineffectual. It must be a beacon at all times, a standard for the world to live up to. We will not fail. Very well. There was a moment of silence as we all collected ourselves. The superior looked grimmer than I had ever seen her. She breathed deeply and seemed to stare right through the bishop, who was offering Angela and I an apologetic smile. Nobody spoke. There was little else to add, I suppose. The bishop turned to the superior, his mood suddenly cheerful. I understand that you are performing in a moment. It would be an honor to attend. Yes, of course. She snapped out of her dark expression. We have just had a feast day for Saint Cecilia, and I shall be performing a short composition in her honor. How delightful. Angela and Hedwig, I would like you two to meet with me in my office once we are done here. I would like you two to share your... Oh, hello. Am I still too early? No. Come in, take a seat. Katherine's smile evaporated when she saw Angela and I standing together. She looked away and busied herself with the doorstop so the rest of the sisters could flow in. I wonder how long she's been standing outside hearing. Everyone else trickled in behind her. I noticed Margaret hanging back to whisper something to Katherine, who reacted to whatever Margaret had told her with an expression of bewilderment. She shook her head and shrugged. Margaret looked oddly panicked, but whatever Katherine meant with that gesture seemed to mildly put her at ease. I guess I should keep an open mind that this could have whatever to do with Catherine II's murder as well. Because, Margaret and Katherine has always been a pair and also have been suspicious. They definitely have something going on. Whether it's pranks or something to do with the chapel, because the other time, in the beginning, they also seem to be quite panicked about this chapel, maybe. So, I want to keep an open mind, but I also want to put it out there that it may not have anything to do with the murder. I was just about to turn away when her eyes met with mine. I whirled away, hoping she did not feel as if I had been spying on her. The gaggle of nuns that had entered the chapel was haphazardly morphing into an orderly line to greet the bishop, who was standing near the front of the room. He had put on a hat in the intervening moments and looked much grander all of a sudden. Behind him, the superior fiddled with the portative organ. People were bowing to the bishop and kissing his ring gently. I realized that I had failed to properly greet him in this manner when I first entered the room and quickly joined the line. How far gone was I to forget how to address my betters? It had only been a few short weeks since I had left my cell, after all. I was standing behind Katherine in line. Darcy was speaking to the bishop ahead of us. She scarcely had to stoop to plant her lips on the ring, and she did so without saying anything. Katherine stepped up as Darcy glided away. Katherine, my darling. Oh, Katharina. Is that her name? You look healthy. This place has done you good, hasn't it? I can't complain. The bishop chuckled and wagged a finger at her before extending his hand for her to kiss. She bent low and took his hand in hers as she planted her lips on a golden band. She stepped away. I walked up to the bishop hesitantly, expecting to be admonished. I can't say I've ever had this happen before. This is a first for both of us, Your Excellency. Indeed. He chuckled. I was not joking. He held out his hand. My lips felt dry in the cool air of the chapel, but even in my sorry state, I could not let myself wet them with my tongue in front of this man. I bent down and kissed the ring. As soon as my mouth touched the metal, I realized I had no idea what to do. I bounced off awkwardly. I stood back up to face the bishop, hoping that it had not been as unpleasant as an experience for him as it had been for me. He simply smiled and waved me off. Ah, Margaret. How have you been faring? It is complicated, Your Excellency. I moved out of earshot and took a seat next to Moira. She had eagerly scooted aside to accommodate me as soon as she saw me leaving the line to greet the bishop. Everyone was seated eventually, all save for the superior and the bishop. The bishop stood off to the side of the altar as the superior adjusted her instrument. She cleared her throat and addressed the chapel. Hello, everyone. I don't mean to keep you all waiting, but I am experiencing some problems with the organ. Oh, must be Margaret and Katherine. She pressed a few keys. The portative wheezed and sputtered, but did not produce whatever sound the superior was hoping for. Well. She began to play a tune. The instrument was not up to the task. One more try, perhaps if I could feel Moira shrinking in her seat next to me. Oh no. There we are. La. There was an echoing clunk as something inside the contraption shifted. Miraculously, the organ sputtered to life. A hushed voice from behind me startled me. It could have been much worse, believe me. She's trying her best. It definitely sounds off-tune. I do not wish to be unkind, so I will simply say that I am grateful that the superior shared her passion with us with such enthusiasm. When the performance finally ended, there was a smattering of applause. The superior gave her audience an odd little curtsy in response. The bishop awakened with a jolt and hastily started clapping along with us. I looked over at Moira, who was smiling sheepishly. She stood up as the clapping died down. I tucked my knees in to let her pass. She walked up to the altar to speak to the superior, clearly offering some congratulations directly. The voice from behind muttered in my ear again. We're all getting together to throw a real celebrations in the cellars later tonight. Another voice whispered in my other ear. Much later tonight, midnight in fact. I shuddered. Katherine was the last person I wanted to spend my time with after midnight, but I wasn't sure refusal was an option from the tone of their voices. What sort of celebration? Your feast day, of course, but also a proper wake for Sister Katherine II, setting off the old chronicler and welcoming the new properly. With a gulp, I nodded slowly. I would be scared too. That's a lot of celebrating for one day, but that's the spirit. You'll manage. You will come. Correct? Yes. I heard the two of them stand up. Katherine patted me on the shoulder and squeezed hard. Her nails dug into my skin through the rope for just an instant. Oh, something is not right. I'm looking forward to it. I was not enjoying this new relationship that had evolved between Katherine and myself. In retrospect, I wonder if our shared secret was driving her to attempt to be earnestly friendly with me in her own unique way. But I think it is equally as likely that she was taking some kind of sick pleasure in taunting me, even though what I knew of her liaison, were I the kind of woman to spread rumors, surely had her in check. As I left the chapel, I noticed Angela standing outside waiting for me. My heart sank. I might have opted for another hour of portative organ recital over this meeting. The superior says we should have discussed this discussion ourselves. But the rest of the sisters passed us by. Once they were out of earshot, Angela continued. She's busy and trusts me to get what I need out of you. And it might be suspicious if all three of us started taking meetings with her in her office. Yes, if I had not just explained the exact reasoning to you already, that would be a reasonable guess. Shall we walk? Lead the way. She turned around and set off down the path to the garden. Tell me what you know. There is really not much to tell yet. You've had almost 3 weeks. What have you been doing? Well, I have had to adjust to a new life, and I have been doing my utmost to not raise suspicions. I must confess I do not understand why it has taken you so long to adjust, as you put it. The way the superior told me, you positively jumped at the chance to leave your cell. That is not true. She turned to me, incredulous. Really now. I was practically forced out. I would have much rather stayed. Why would I willingly break such a sacred vow? One that I had held for almost 20 years. It's true that I was moved by the superior's cause, but if there was a way I could have helped without leaving my cell, I would have chosen it. I imagined an alternate path, one where I imagined my life as an anchoress, while the superior brought me information to judge impartially, and became very angry with myself. If I had fought for myself, perhaps I would have solved this ghastly crime and not had my life's work thrown away. Interesting. Do you believe me? I can certainly see the superior glossing over some details in her zeal. She had some already unlocked my door by the time I had the chance to protest. That does sound like her. Impulsive, bull-headed. No wonder she had such a fascination with Katherine's death. Do you not share that interest? Did Katherine earn some scorn somehow? Katherine earned plenty of scorn, but that's not what I meant. I just mean that despite all of the differences, she and Katherine shared a similar distaste for simple answers. It felt very strange talking to Angela this candidly. I would not describe her as being any more friendly than usual. In fact, her attitude was putting my teeth on edge. But at the very least, it was more of a real conversation than I was used to having with her. So you don't think that James did it, correct? Even after the superior explained everything? Yes, I do. Oh, that being said, perhaps there is something you can tell me that would change my mind. Hence why I asked you to tell me everything you knew several minutes ago, I think. Well, I wouldn't know where to begin. I'm not even sure what I've seen or heard that would count as any sort of clue or hint. Why not start by telling me the strangest things you've seen first? And I'll decide what is pertinent and what is typical of Limbero oddness. In that case, the absolute most out-of-place thing I've seen is... I realized how ridiculous I might sound, but it was the thing weighing on my mind the heaviest. Go on. Well, I saw a ghost. Or perhaps even a demon. At any rate, an apparition of some sort. I can't imagine why the superior has summoned my help in this matter. I had heard that your ghost situation was an elaborate prank, no? One of Eustace's little dress-up games? That's what everyone thinks, but you did not see a ghost. Let us move on. Tell me something else. I really did, though. Eustace can't account for one of the visitations I remember. Please take this seriously, Hedwig. I do not have time for folk tales, and I definitely do not want to waste my time on this already spurious investigation being played for a fool. If this is an extension of some practical joke, please drop it. Tell me something else. I promise you this is no joke. I saw the same figure a few other times outside my cell window on the second floor of the cloister. In fact, when I bumped into you on that first day I joined the congregation, I was running up to try and see who it was. Angela let out a deep, almost rattling sigh. It was Eustace. She did the same infantile act in the Misericorde later, no? Yes, but she swears that the time outside my window wasn't her, so she's lying. And she swears the ghost in the hallway was her, but I saw her not minutes later. In her nightclothes, no less. Oh, no, I didn't think about that. In fact, the only person I didn't see on the landing after the incident was you. She shot me a look so piercing, I physically recoiled. I was blissfully, already fast asleep, while all of that nonsense was happening. My shrieking didn't wake you up? No, it did not, and if you really are insinuating that I am your prime suspect, this would be quite a precarious situation for you, wouldn't it? She glared at me meaningfully as my head whipped around in panic, realizing how utterly alone we were in the garden. I looked back at her in dismay and nearly screamed when I saw what she had produced in her hands while I had been looking away. Oh! Oh my god! Oh my god! What? Oh my god! I'm so scared now. If I were a murderer who felt you were on my trail, I could have punctured your neck silently whenever I liked, as soon as we passed behind the hedgerows. She idly held the knife out and pressed the flat side of the blade under my chin, tilting my head upward to forcibly meet her gaze. We stayed locked like that for just a moment before she finally retracted her hand. I carry this for self-defense, against bears and strange men. Some joke. I thought it was rather amusing. She twirled the little dagger in her hands idly. Where did you get it? I've had it for years. A keepsake from my old convent. I thought I had lost it ages ago, but I'm glad to have found it again recently. Seems like someone's setting something up. It helps me feel safer in troubled times such as these. But James is locked up in the hospital. Your point? Well, if you're still feeling unsafe, perhaps deep down you know it could have been someone else. I doubt James is the only pervert who lurks around Misericorde. I see. Is that why you're agreed to help the superior then? You think there's someone else out there? Possibly. Her eyes narrowed. My tone was incredulous, at least. As incredulous as I could sound while as nervous as I was, and she could see it. He let out a short, sharp sigh and then took a step closer to me. I had always been wary of Angela, but I had assumed she was personally unpleasant, shall we say, at the very worst. This outright malice she radiated, twirling a dagger between her fingers, was repellent to me. What will you do when we find who really killed Katherine? Let me be perfectly clear. I firmly believe I have already found the man who really killed Katherine. I have stated it many times and will continue to state it. But I am open to investigating the matter closer, if only to prove that I am correct. I found him skulking around not far from the cloister after Sister Cherry found the body. On her morning walk, yes. The superior did tell me that much. Morning walk? Charity does not take morning walks, at least no further than the cloister. What on earth do you mean? Of course she does. Angela let out another sigh, not as short and sharp this time, but filled with a sort of sympathetic condescension. She put her arms behind her back and began to walk again, leading me through the hedges. I really must press you for every last little detail now. More than anything else, I can help you find inconsistencies and lies. Do not take this the wrong way. You are rather credulous. I do not mean to be insulting. It's to be expected of someone who spent 20 years locked up in a little room. Angela is probably one of the only people that remembers this about Hedwig. My quarrel is with the superior, not you. If this was how Angela treated people she had no quarrel with, I dreaded to imagine how she argued with people she did. I began to wonder if the superior had ever seen Angela's knife come out. Charity does not take morning walks. She is too old and too fat for that sort of thing. The furthest she walks in the morning is from the dorm to the chairs she and Martha share. I would consider that a morning walk. That's what I mean too. It is a walk in the morning, I suppose, but I do not think that is an image meant to be conjured by that phrasing. Charity would very much like the superior, or whoever she tells a story to believe that she exercises rigorously. This has nothing to do with Katherine's murder. No, it doesn't. But I think it makes for a good object lesson. People lie constantly. It is practically a reflex for most of the women here. Has Katherine recounted her story to you? I very quickly tried to remember exactly what I could say to Angela in response without angering Katherine. I was making too many enemies. She told me that she, was forced out of Limbero village because of politics, or some such. Not a lie, but certainly an obfuscation. Katherine was accused of murdering her husband. I did my best to feign surprise. My goodness, did she really do it? In truth, I don't believe so, but she doesn't like to talk about it either way. I imagine it must be very hurtful to discuss, especially if it was a false accusation. Yes, which is why I relented, finally, after arguing the superior long enough. As sure as I am that James is the culprit, I must admit, the prospect of being wrong haunts me. I spoke to James. He is in a lot of pain. Similar pain, I think. We had completed a loop of the garden. Angela doubled back and I followed. Neither of us spoke as we made our way back between the flower bushes. Angela appeared deep in thought, and I was hopeful that I could find an excuse to take my leave as soon as possible. However, she finally stopped and began to recount the facts she had organized in her head as we walked. I was stuck listening. Charity found Katherine in a cloister, beheaded, next to the murder weapon. She alerted the superior, whose office I was in at the time, as we spent the whole night arguing about the various issues around the abbey. When I left the office, I ran into Eustace coming up from the cellars and told her to rouse the rest of the sisters and search the west side. I myself immediately began a search of the grounds east of the cloister, while the superior comforted Charity, but still, all of the sisters on the west side and only Angela on the east. I found James skulking away from the abbey, and Darcy discovered his bloody cloak not far from his cart. That is the story as meticulously detailed as I can tell it. Now, have you heard or seen anything that contradicts those events or casts new light upon them? I had to take a minute to rack my mind. She has to tell Angela about Katherine, though. I began to realize how little investigating I had done. I suppose the mysterious figure doesn't count. It does not. Then, James claims he was not wearing his cloak when he delivered the mail that morning. That's something surely, and you said Darcy found his cloak on the west side of the abbey, yes? I see what you're getting at. James was found on the east side, but his cloak was on the other end of the abbey, by the front entrance. Yes! Surely this proves he's telling the truth. I remember it being particularly windy that day, as it often is here on the mountain. It is possible his cloak simply came loose as he attempted to make his escape. I suppose that is possible. However, it is also possible it did not. Therefore, we must find a way to reconcile this discrepancy one way or the other. Did James tell you anything that might help? He said that Katherine would be able to vouch for him. Angela looked at me with an oddly quizzical expression, and I quickly added some detail. Because he saw her in the library when he was delivering a letter, when in reality they were in the room together. The dormitory. I see. And has Katherine confirmed this? Yes, but that wasn't enough for the superior when I told her. Why not? Because, well, I actually saw Katherine and James speaking to each other. Quite recently, in fact. Nonsense. It is true, I followed her out into the hills one night. I did not know it was her at first, but we crossed paths when she returned. Unfortunately, I didn't overhear exactly what they spoke about. You followed Katherine all the way out to the hospitalum. Yes. All by yourself? Yes. Angela's eyebrows were liable to disappear underneath her white cap. And here I was thinking you always refused to take the initiative. The superior neglected to inform me of that particular wrinkle. I'm starting to think I may have accidentally made Katherine the superior's top suspect. I must admit, it might make her mine. If I entertain the idea that it was not James, at least. You think her story is tainted because of it? It's hard to imagine a scenario where the two can be taken at their word alone. Which, I'm afraid, puts us in stalemate. The superior sent me down to the village to see what the general opinion about Katherine's old murder case was. She wanted me to judge how believable the idea of Katherine killing someone was. What nonsense. It did feel a bit aimless. I'm not particularly used to public. No, that's not why she sent you down to the village. She sent you down all the way down there so the rest of the sisters could work on your feast. Is it true? A waste of time and a rather tasteless way to treat a very serious matter. I agree. I had guessed that the others certainly made use of my absence to prepare a surprise, but the idea that the entire trip had been a frivolous exercise had me seething. I don't think so, though. She learned something, that's for sure. All that anguish for nothing. She could have just kept me in a library for the day. Indeed. Well, the bishop is here now, and his arrival used to be your deadline. With him here... Angela stroked her chin with a bony finger and gazed at the rapidly darkening sky. Let us make a pact, you and I. Forget what the superior says. She means well, but she is not equipped to handle this situation. I don't understand. The superior is desperate to save face in front of the bishop. Their relationship is strained, that much I know. She believes that if she can present him with a satisfactory, no, not just satisfactory, salacious explanation for this tragedy, he will overlook years of shoddy leadership. She's looking for accolades, is she? For a promotion. So what do we do differently? Nothing. Only when we have our answer. Whether it is assurance that James was the killer, or if we discover the unthinkable and accuse one of our own, we report to the bishop ourselves. Why? To get the proper credit for our work, of course. Noble as her intentions might seem, I detect an undercurrent of satisfaction, self-satisfaction. I shook my head. Angela had spat a lot of venom this evening, but this was too much. I don't believe the superior is that selfish. For the first time ever, I heard Angela laugh. It was a deeply unpleasant, mirthless squawk. You just told me she pulled you out of your cell against your will. You're being used. You and I are both being used. I had no answer for this. The last bit of daylight was fading. Wind rustled the flower bushes, and for a moment I felt like I could hear the sea. Nothing else about our work changes. We can work separately even. I know you might prefer that. I certainly would. And we will meet with the superior at her request. But when it is time to give the bishop an answer, we give it to him. Angela held her hand out to me. I thought about my cell and the peace those walls provided. I thought about the sheer terror I had felt when I had heard the rattle of the superior's keys and the ugly sobs I had stifled with my pillow that night. I thought about the childish rage that I had felt as I had thrown that soiled copy of Matthew from my window, and the sheer terror I had felt when I saw whoever it was outside watching me. I thought about Katherine speaking to me through the squint, and how I would never, ever have a conversation like that with another soul. I grasped my hand around Angela's wrist, and she wrapped her fingers around mine. I could feel the hard leather strap of a sheath as we shook hands, and immediately regretted my decisions. A sheath for her knife? Dagger, perhaps? Nothing? No, there is something. I just can't really see it. Oh, I don't like it. It's so scary. I know I say that all the time, but it really is scary. Alright. I'm gonna end here for the day. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. It's been a long episode, I think. And with everything coming to light about, the feast, Katherine's murder. Yes, Katherine's murder. But also, there are a lot of things. I think I've already said in previously, but I think I'll just add on here. I think there is definitely discrepancies, and I wish that Hedwig has someone that she can trust to tell everything fully too. But she sadly doesn't have anyone, because you can't trust these sisters. At least not now. Angela is probably the most trustworthy one, and that's only because she doesn't like to mingle with the rest, and I think, well, I just can't really see her doing it. But there's some suspicious details, like why was she the only one to search the east grounds and made everyone search the west? You could argue that Angela just doesn't want to be there with them, but I mean, even in the case of someone's murder, you still are gonna act on your own accord? I don't know about that, but still, I think Angela is not very high up. Katherine is definitely starting to seem a little bit more suspicious, especially after the chapel where she squeezed Hedwig's shoulders really hard. I think that is something going on over there. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!